We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday, and as so often the case on Saturdays, we have the good fortune of having Ed joining us on the program. Ed's a big favorite with a lot of listeners, so I'm always glad to have him back. I could take him or leave him, but you guys like him, so I bring him in. I throw out a little charity, and thanks, Ed. Thanks for coming in.
You put up with me for 30 years. What's another couple of days?
That's what I keep telling my wife. You put up with me for 40 years. If you got tired of me now, you'd look kind of stupid. What took you so fucking long?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Ed, you're our Tennessee liberal who's contemplating
Yes.
coming back to Minnesota. Liberally speaking, that
Yeah.
would be a wise choice. And it sounds like weather-wise, it's a wise choice. You're dealing with some weather down there that, as a guy who grew up in Tennessee, is a little outside the norm.
Yeah. I mean, when I was living here before, we had snow in the winters. Sometimes, a foot here and there. Since I've been back, we've had one large snow. May used to be very temperate in the early part of June, and maybe in July, maybe early August, you get a 90-degree reading, maybe once. Now they start in May and they're fairly standard. The next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at 90s. We get way more rainfall than we did. And the central part of the state is Tornado Alley now.
Yeah.
And, they get flooding and all kinds of bad weather in Nashville along the plateau and so forth. And so it's moving this direction. So why should I hang around and wait till it gets here, right?
Well, yeah, and
So,
that's the interesting thing with climate change causes some problems. But in Minnesota, while it does cause some problems, it seems like we have more tempered winters. We had horrible winters for a long time. The summers can get a little hot, but nothing like down south. It's almost as if, over and above all the negatives, Minnesota has gotten some positives out of this climate change. But it's
yeah,
going to continue to change, so it will get worse.
yeah, yeah. Unlike what Donald Trump says, we don't get more beachfront property, though.
No, no, we don't. We don't. Yesterday, people are listening to this on Saturday. Yesterday was a big day. I don't know if you knew this, but yesterday was Donald Trump's 78th birthday.
Oh my goodness. Who knew he was that old? I did.
Yeah, everybody talks about Joe Biden's age, but Donald Trump's no spring chicken, and it's starting to show. Have you noticed that with all the stuff going on, the convictions, the troubles, the no money? Have you been noticing the wear and tear on Donald Trump's face? I certainly have. Not to mention his communications as well.
His communications, his general grooming has gone way downhill. The hair is just out of hand. It's like he doesn't even care anymore. The other thing, he was on stage somewhere, and it looked like somebody poured a bucket of water over him. He was sweating so bad. Some
Yeah.
people think he's trying to get clean before the campaign, gets hot and heavy. He's Most people think he's addicted at least to Adderall and a few other things, but it looks he's showing signs of trying to kick a habit here, and the sweating is pretty indicative of that. That kind of fop sweat thing kind of goes with it sometimes. So
Yeah.
who knows if he'll even make it to the election,
Well,
much
that's
less get elected.
that's kind of what I've said all along. I don't know if he can physically and emotionally handle what he's under. And it's interesting that take you just said that he's trying to get clean off of something. You heard the story, no doubt, when he had to go to this pre-sentencing probationary meeting.
Ooh,
Basically to get a sense of who he is, what he is, so the
right.
probationary officer could offer a suggestion in the terms of sentencing. He was required to take a drug test, and he
Yes.
refused to take the drug test. Now, I don't know
Mhm.
if that's contempt of court and they can throw him in jail.
Sure it is.
Clearly they didn't.
Sure it is.
But I got to think that that's going to have some bearing on the recommendation from the probationary.
Oh, he's not cooperating. He's not doing what he is required to do. Anybody else, they would have drug him in a room, give him a bottle, and said, "Stay here till you fill it." You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
we do have a two-tiered system of justice. There's no doubt about it. And Donald Trump has actually benefited from it, not the other way around.
Exactly. And one of the things he's talked about, this is the ironic thing. This is the perfect example of projection with Donald Trump. We've got this debate coming up in less than 2 weeks, 12 days, I think, 10 days. And Donald Trump is just flummoxed by the fact that Joe Biden can speak in full sentences and sound pretty intelligent. So he must be on drugs. And he said that he felt, and he just said this the other day, he thinks that Joe Biden should take a drug test. That's ironic coming from a guy who refused to take a drug test.
Yeah, well, and I don't know why that wasn't widely reported. I heard about it, but I didn't hear anybody in the news talking about it. They should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead, he comes out with, he says Milwaukee's a shitty city or something, and that gets the emphasis instead of where it should be.
Right.
On the fact that he refused to take a drug test, and he's showing signs that he's trying to sweat it out, probably so then he could go in and take it at some point. But they need to stop treating this guy with kid gloves. I'm sorry. And there were sitting members of Congress who defied subpoenas who should be hauled in. I mean, Bannon's in prison, or soon will be.
July 1.
Yeah, based on the fact that he ignored a subpoena, right?
Right.
That's the charge. Jim Jordan did the same thing. There's a couple of others sitting members of Congress who did the same thing and should be under the same restrictions. But no, for some reason, they're not. Why is that? The DOJ hasn't brought charges, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And, people are always putting up for question, will they put Donald Trump in jail when the sentencing comes out on July 1? And I know there are some things causing concern. He's a former president. He's 78 years old. But frankly, I don't know how they don't put him in jail, at least for a short period of time. I mean, he's not remorseful. He looks like he could do it again. He attacked the judge. He attacked the witnesses. He attacked the jury. He won't take a drug test. I mean, how do you not put a guy like this in jail even for a month?
And I have the same question about those guys who showed up in the blue suits and red ties, his surrogates, Ramaswamy and Johnson. And why aren't they in jail? They were essentially his method of dodging the gag order and should be implicated, should have been charged, and should have been held in contempt and thrown into jail.
Right.
These guys got to use what you got, it's time to do that. It's time to start. Who cares if it gets appealed and they throw it out? Put them in jail anyway. For a little while and make them appeal it.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the other thing to consider. If the judge decides to put Donald Trump in jail for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is, he has the option to not offer bail. Now, if he gets bail, chances are he'll appeal and he'll be out of jail up until the time that he loses that appeal. But theoretically, the judge could say no bond. Right. And under these circumstances, that wouldn't be all that crazy.
No, it wouldn't. And to me, those guys showing up was a slap to the judge.
Yeah.
And it was obviously connected. Trump could have told him not to. Don't do that. I'm sure he told them, you better get your ass down here and support me if you want to be my vice president.
Right.
Because look who showed up, Rubio and Vance and the other, weak-kneed, spineless wannabe vice presidential candidates who have shown themselves to be nothing but empty suits. Why would you want an empty suit vice president?
Well, and the thing about it is I look at these guys and I go, what a horrible fucking gamble. I mean, You're putting your reputation and your career on the line in hopes of being vice president, a candidate for vice president, for a guy that has no shot of winning the fucking election. Are these people so delusional and so deluded that they think they really have a chance that they can pull this out? I mean, anybody with above average intelligence has got to see where this is headed.
Well, look at it this way. None of these guys, not one of them, has any interest in being vice president. It's a thankless position.
There you go.
What they're hoping is that Trump gets in there, dies immediately, and they're president. That's what they're banking on, you know. And look at him though. Rubio has he has no credibility left. I mean, here's a guy who was staunchly against Trump until he wasn't, you know. Vance, same thing. And here's a guy who got famous writing a book trashing his own mother and calling all his relatives white trash. That's J.D. Vance for you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
what's there to admire?
these are some folks that have very little integrity and are willing to give up any kind of reputational situation or their careers just for one shot at a little power. There's not even a lot of money involved in these positions unless you parlay it into something else, which they no doubt would, but they're willing to risk this situation. I wanted to bring something up. You brought something up that I hadn't thought about, that Donald Trump was trying to get clean from drugs he's on. We've heard Adderall, we've heard cocaine. It could be any number of things. I'm guessing you've had people you've known that have been caught up in addiction at one point or another. I have. I know people that
Oh
have been
yeah,
addicted.
absolutely.
And no doubt
Yeah, I know people who've gone through rehab and made it. You know.
and made it. But generally, when you're dealing with somebody who's addicted, you have to go through rehab a couple, three times, sometimes multiple
Yeah.
times, because you're so connected to this
Yeah.
drug and you're drawn to this drug. So the idea that Donald Trump, some guy who just can't control any part of his emotions, is going to get clean in a couple months just sounds fucking crazy. There's no way this
Well, it
guy
is.
and there's no way this guy's going to get clean on his own without some kind of help, which he's not going to look for because that would be bad publicity. This guy is just going to destroy his looks and his mind by trying to get off the drugs, if he's even trying to do that. Um,
Well, if you see, he's melted down how many times now on the at his rallies, and
right,
ostensibly it was because the teleprompter went out, so he goes into this rant about electric batteries on boats and sharks and stuff,
right,
and totally. I mean, I could follow him because he's talked about this before,
right.
but your average person, what the hell are you talking about? And he talks about breaking Elton John's records, and he talks about religion and how great it is because if we didn't have to want to go to heaven, then we wouldn't do good because he's got some convoluted thing that showed. I mean, any fundamentalist Christian, any evangelical, anybody with any religious background at all would listen to this idiot and go, well, he's got it all wrong. He can't be a Christian. But they don't. They give him I don't know. Do they not hear? Do they not listen? What's going on here? He is clearly has no idea about the tenets of Christianity that he continues to try to explain to people. Donald Trump knows nothing about anything,
No,
and
he's not.
he has no intellectual ability at all,
He's
no
not.
cognitive.
He's not a smart guy, and I can tell what he's doing because I've known people like him. Um, Basically, he has little tidbits of information, little phrases, little
Exactly.
words, and then he takes those little words and he expands on them and exaggerates on them. And he does that because he thinks he's brilliant. He literally
Yeah.
believes he's brilliant. So he can take a tiny idea, expand on it, and of course it's true because it came out his motherfucking mouth. But that's what he's doing, and that's why he looks so silly. And now he's caught between a rock and a hard place regarding this debate situation. He's the one that asked for
Yeah.
the debate. He asked for the debate because he needed the attention. He needed a way to fundraise. Then Joe says, "Yeah, we'll do it. Here are my terms."
Right.
Joe gave him a little jab. He got emotional. He jumped and accepted under those rules where they're going to cut off mics.
Yeah.
There is no audience. A lot of things working against Donald Trump's normal strategy. It really takes all the power that he thought he had away from him. So now he admits or agrees to doing this debate coming up in less than 2 weeks on June 27th. But he's got a problem. The problem is if he shows up, he knows, his people know he's going to look absolutely foolish. So a lot of people are thinking, okay,
Yeah.
he's going to back out. He's going to back out. But then he's got another problem. He's going to be embarrassed because he looks like a pussy ass bitch from backing out for something he was asking for. So there's a quandary. I don't know if you heard this story, but it was on a right wing media outlet and he was being interviewed. And this surprised me, but it didn't. But here's his latest comment. He said,
Oh, I don't want your vote, right?
what I think I should do is just lose the first debate. Just go ahead and throw it, throw the race. That way we can keep Joe Biden in the race, keep him in the Democratic position, so I can run and beat him. He's basically saying he's like a pro fighter. I'm fighting a lesser
Right.
guy, so
Rope.
I'm just going to carry him, a rope a dope or something like that, just so he can stay in the fight and we can keep this entertaining. I had to laugh.
Yeah.
That's so narcissistic. That's such a fucking spin on things that's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think it's important to point this out. People say Trump lies, and he does. We know that. We know he knows nothing, and he tries to explain something he doesn't understand, and he does all this, but because he's such a narcissist, he believes his own lies. He
Right.
lies to
He does.
himself as much as he does to us. He really does think that because he had an uncle who taught at MIT, that makes him smart. That somehow or other you know things just because you know them. You don't have to learn them. It's because you have good genes that you know things. This is his mindset. This is how incredibly stupid he is. And the thing is, I know people who also think that. They
Yeah.
think wisdom is some sort of commodity that comes with you, that is
Yeah.
born in you, that you don't have to crack a book. You don't have to look at research. You don't have to do anything except think about something, and then you have the right answer. And that's really what he does. And as you say, let's use an example of the windmills and the whales, right? We know that windmills do make a little noise. Okay. People who live near them have commented on that. We also know that high tension power lines possibly have some ill effects on people, perhaps cause cancer. I remember protests in Minnesota when I was back in the 70s. Paul Wellstone was among the guys who were pointing this out, that they were running these powerful transmission lines through farmland, and it was affecting the farmers, and they were protesting it. So,
Right.
okay, you got those facts, okay, and then whales are beaching themselves, and there has been speculation it's because some of the spy organizations use this high pitched transmission that goes through the ocean, and that because whales have hearing that it's driving them crazy and they beach themselves.
Right.
Nobody
Right.
knows that, but it's a theory, right? He put all of that together and said that windmills cause whales to beach themselves. He took these totally unrelated bits of information and that he had heard somewhere and put them all together, and he comes up with that. And no, none of his people correct that. None of his people go, this man is insane. This man is crazy. This
Yeah.
man knows nothing. And they sit there and they take it in. He's my guy. He's
Yeah.
my guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's in it,
I told people on the podcast here the other day, I said, my uncle, who's now passed away, my uncle was very talented. He was a very talented taxidermist. So by virtue of that, I'm going to start a new hobby,
yes.
collecting roadkill and making money mounting roadkill. Because clearly I can do the taxidermy. If my uncle can fucking do the taxidermy, that's the somebody once said when Donald Trump first came in, that it was like the movie Idiocracy. And if you haven't seen the
Yes.
movie Idiocracy, it's really absurd how the government got in this movie. I mean, it was ridiculous. You had a pro wrestler as a president, and being smart meant you had like a 70 IQ, and it was just really ridiculous. But some of the stuff that's coming out now and the ignorance and the ridiculousness there makes it all too fucking real. I mean, it's not exactly like that, but we're at a point, we've always been at a point where we don't like this guy because that's a crazy idea. But now it's just an absurd idea, the things that they're talking about. And people are still buying into it. And you and I need to get something fucking really absurd, convince them, and sell these motherfuckers something because they will buy anything.
Well, I point out constantly to people that go watch Idiocracy and then take a week long look at the Republicans in the House of Representatives and what they say. And you will see that the people currently making up the Republican side of the House of Representatives are all idiots. They are doctrinaire idiots. As long as they are evangelical, pro gun, then the people will, the other idiots will vote for them. All of the intelligence has been bleached out of the Republican Party in the House and in large part in the Senate. The Senate, I'm a little harder on because I think they are not idiots. They are just evil people.
Right.
They realize that they're on the wrong side, but they're going to keep doing it anyway. In the House, these people don't realize that they are stupid. They really don't. I mean, this is Dunning-Kruger magnified to the 10th power. With these people thinking they're intelligent when they are incredibly, incredibly stupid people. Your Marjorie Taylor Greene, your Boebert, your all of these MAGA types, they're incredibly stupid people. Some of them are good con men and grifters and so forth, but uh, a lot of them aren't even good at that. I mean, if they were actually out on the street trying to make a living as con men or grifters, they wouldn't make a dime because they're not smart enough to do that. They are incredibly, incredibly stupid, incredibly incompetent people who I don't know how they get elected, except that they come from districts where the general educational level and the general genetic inbred um, makeup of the people is so low that they're the cream of the crop. I mean, that's all that I can figure.
I have a theory and see what you think. Uh, the ignorance, the corruption, the criminality that we are seeing in the House of Representatives, the Senate, and all of government at this point is no worse than it ever was. This stuff was always there. It's just that Donald Trump and this whole MAGA culture has exposed it, brought it to light. This isn't new stuff. It's just new that we know about it. What do you think?
Well, I think that's to a certain extent true, but I do think that anyone in the Republican Party who had integrity or intelligence or ran for office because they wanted to represent their constituents and do the best they could for the people of their state or district, those people either cannot stand to associate with the people that are not there now, including the leadership, the party chairs, and so forth, or else those people see that they have integrity and they primary them out of the way. So one of those two things goes on. There's nothing left in the Republican Party that smacks of integrity in either the House or the Senate, because the leadership will get rid of you very quickly if you show any sort of propensity to work with the other side, which is required. That's
Right.
how government works. You have two sides that compromise on something, and they can't do that.
Well, that's the whole point of Congress, to take two
Yes.
sides, compromise, negotiate, and come up with an answer that both sides can live with. That's the essence of Congress. And that hasn't been part of Congress for what, 8 years? No,
Yeah.
yeah, at least eight
Possibly
years.
more. I go back to Reagan.
Yeah.
I go back to Reagan, really, and Newt Gingrich was the one who actively started getting rid of good people and bringing in the schmoes. I mean, supporting schmoes forever was his unofficial slogan. get rid of the integrity and so forth, and we'll make it all one-sided. That was his aim, and he did a pretty good job of it.
I'll acknowledge that I'm a glass half full guy. I try to look at the positive side and I try to look at all the angles and see what's going on. And I get a lot of people coming to my page saying, "Oh, the world is over. It's Armageddon. We're going to lose. Donald Trump is just going to get off." And I don't really see it like that. I understand the way trends go in people's lives. You have good times and you have bad times. And sometimes when you get to the absolute worst moment in time, that's when there's a paradigm shift and things start on a better track. Now, we have people that all have seen all the horrible things in government, whether it be the Republicans, the Supreme Court, or Congress, or things. We're at a pivotal point in terms of the election in November. And if it works out the way I expect it will, and I do, that the Democrats will maintain and extend some control. This is a time that's going to see a lot of changes because people are upset about all the decisions by the Supreme Court, about all that's going on, and that while this may be a bad time and we are struggling at this point, that can only mean that a sunnier day is ahead and not that far off. Am I just
I
Pollyanna
hope you're,
here?
yeah. No, I hope that's the case. The trouble is, we've taken a look at the Senate and the House, and they are totally dysfunctional.
Right.
Now, one thing the court was supposed to do was to kind of guard against this idea that one party could somehow or other gerrymander their way into a majority and then pass legislation that only benefited them. The court was supposed to be able to put a stop to that and say that's unconstitutional for you to do that. The court has now been compromised. There are 5 people on the court who will vote the way they are told. And we saw that today. We saw this irrational decision they made on bump stocks.
Right.
Now, a bump stock is a mechanism that you put onto an AR-15 or other semi-automatic weapon that essentially makes it into an automatic machine gun. And what it does is when you pull the trigger, the recoil makes your rifle do this so that it keeps shooting.
Right.
So it's an insane, useless outside of the battlefield function for a weapon.
Right.
Automatic weapons were illegal in this country from the get-go, primarily because the bootleggers and the mafia and so forth during the untouchable years used Thompson submachine guns, and they saw how devastating these were against local police who didn't have them, so they were banned. And that's the way it went for many years. And now the Supreme Court just legalized anybody who can buy an AR-15 and a bump stock has an automatic weapon.
Exactly.
That means when I go into a school, I don't have to shoot the kids one at a time. I can mow them down like grass.
Right.
And that's what will happen. You watch. Give it 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Now, for people understanding, the bump stock dilemma or the argument came in 2017 after a guy was in a hotel room in the upper floors of a hotel in Las Vegas, and he was overlooking an open area where there was a concert and thousands of people milling around. He took his semi-automatic weapon, he broke the window, and he started picking off people. And where it was really egregious was he had the bump stock. And as you said, the bump stock basically uses the recoil to pull the trigger. So it's automatic. You shoot, recoil, shoot again, recoil, shoot again. And it does resemble a machine gun. He killed 58 people, and that caused an uproar. The important thing is the ATF banned this thing, and they did it under the Trump administration in 2017 or 2018. So the idea that they would come back and make it now legal to use the bump stock is absolutely fucking ridiculous. I personally think, as bad as this is and as dangerous as it is for people in general, clearly the Supreme Court says we've got a war against women and we don't care who gets killed. It's opened up and you can use a machine gun to do it. But I look at this something akin to overturning Roe v. Wade before the midterms. We've got Roe v. Wade as an issue going into 2024. Throw this on top, it's just frosting on the cake and makes it that much more impossible for Republicans to win in November.
I hope you're right. I mean, any sane person, essentially any mother with children in a public school or a private school. Remember, the last school shooting was in a religious school, a Baptist or Catholic, I forget which it was, in Nashville. That was the last school shooting. Um, and that's where they stood around the hallway forever while the guy was popping the kids, you know. But that was the last one. But public, private, it doesn't matter. Any mother who sends their kids off every day on a school bus has got to think, what if somebody shows up? They really haven't done anything. I mean, Texas, they said, oh, we're going to make them not soft targets. We're going to have one entrance. We're going to do mental health care. And they didn't do shit. They did
No,
nothing. They not one thing did they do. They just kicked the can down the road. They throw out a lot of rhetoric. Oh, we're going to take care of the problem. We know how to do it. We're going to have good guys with guns in every classroom. They don't do it. You
no.
know, I mean, and it would be ineffective anyway. First guy who goes down is the good guy with the gun. You
Well,
know,
yeah.
I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, everybody knows that. And because they have the bad guy has the element of surprise always, always.
Well,
And now, you know, he walks in with a machine gun and the other guy's got a pistol over here. Who's going to win?
well, that's exactly the point. They're starting to talk. They always talk about, well, we'll give teachers guns. Well, sure, give teachers guns. They get paid so much anyway. You might as well put them into warfare too. But if you give the
Yeah,
teacher a gun, what are you going to give that teacher? A fucking pistol or a squirrel gun or something? And the guy walks in with a AR-15 with a bump stock. That gun is going to be of no value. What I think we should do is we should put together uh, a protest in front of the Supreme Court, get a bunch
yeah.
of women and a bunch of people of color, give them all AR-15s with bump stock, because you can do whatever you want with guns, uh, and have them protest in front of the Supreme Court. See how they like that decision then.
I think you're right. That's the first thing I said. And I said, make it police. Make every policeman in the United States who does not want to face down a bump stock equipped AR 15 go to the Supreme Court and stand on the steps
Yeah,
with an AR 15 with a bump stock on it
right.
and show them exactly how it feels, that how threatened you feel. Because I mean, let's face it, when the cops go into certain situations, they have no idea what they're facing. And so I feel for them in every case because more often than not, they are outgunned in all of these situations. And sure, they've got more people, but when a guy can have a 60 round magazine and empty that magazine in 8 seconds, just throwing the bullets out there, one of them is going to hit you. You
Right.
know, that's the thing. You know, it's you don't have to be a good shot with a bump stock and an AR-15. You're sending out a wall of lead,
You
and
know, you
that's
know,
what's going to happen.
well, here's what else is ironic. You know, if you're a Republican and you believe in the Second Amendment, you believe everybody can have as many guns as they want to and do whatever they want, except for a guy named Hunter Biden who happened to be doing drugs. That's the hypocrisy of it all. They put him into court in
Yeah,
a case that should have never been tried, find him guilty of owning
right.
a gun while he's a drug addict or buying a gun while he's a drug addict. To me, if you're willing to back that, you should be willing to, because it's not just illegal to have buy a gun when you're a drug addict. It's illegal to have a gun when you're a
Right.
drug addict. So that tells me we've got a problem here. We need to get every person who buys and owns a gun a drug test. And if you don't pass the drug test, we take your shit. See,
Yeah.
they fucked up here because they went against their own, their own beliefs just to get a libtard. And now that they've got the libtard, they've got to answer that question. Well, how many other people are on drugs that have guns, and how many of them are
Yeah.
big Second Amendment motherfuckers?
Yeah. I mean, so now shouldn't everybody who goes to buy a gun have to take a drug test?
I would think so.
Uh, you would think so. I mean, you have to. I haven't read the argument. I haven't seen the argument. I haven't seen the opinion that came down about this bump stock situation, but I don't have to because I have a rational mind to a degree. I'm not the smartest guy who ever lived. I'm not the most rational guy who ever lived, but I know shit from Shinola, and this is nothing but shit. It is an intellectually indefensible argument, or at least an opinion that there is no way. I mean, I've heard a couple of things that make absolutely no sense. Number one, we have more than one Supreme Court justice who has said that the whole decision about the whole debate about the Second Amendment is bullshit to begin with. It was clearly meant to apply to militias. It was clearly meant to apply to militias. I say that again. And that we have distinguished jurists who say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anyone who insists that the founding fathers, who were rational men, saw it as everybody gets a gun, that was stupid, because in their society, they knew there were people who should not have guns.
Right.
There,
Right.
in every society, there are people who should not have guns, period.
Right.
And if you tell me, well, everybody's right in the Constitution, it is in the Constitution, and it says militia. And there is no way around that. It's right there. It's right at the beginning. It shows their intent. Anybody who argues differently, listen to me. If you think differently, you're wrong.
Period.
Period.
People
Go
will
away.
always people will say to me, "What don't you understand about your rights shall not be infringed?" And I said, "Well, what is it you don't understand about regulated militia?" It's very specific
Yeah.
of what it is.
Yes.
And basically it was to protect the people from government gone rogue. They knew this was a new government and things could change and people could be bad, and the people needed to protect themselves from a government, but that it wasn't everybody get a gun and just start shooting willy-nilly. It very specifically says regulated militia, and that doesn't mean crazy
Yeah.
individuals. Their argument can be discredited by using that argument. And I don't know why they've been allowed to get away with it so long. Um, I get these comments, and people will always say to me, "Wow, it really looks bad out there." And Donald Trump is cunning, which I just laugh at. He's not fucking cunning. And that they're going to cheat and they're going to do all this stuff. And they're afraid. And I try to explain to people, and I think you'll get this too, is that for decades and decades, the Republicans have gotten in our face. They've made veiled threats, and the Democrats have believed them, and they've cowed and they've backed off. This is why we are where we are right now, is because we let them get a fucking way with it. If we take the other option and slap the taste out of their mouth and push them back, that's how we win. The idea of sitting here in fear and curling up in a corner is just the stupidest fucking thing in the world. And I hate hearing it, whether you're Democrat or Republican. This is a time we've got them on the run. This is a time we need to fight harder. And I don't know what's so hard about people doing that. Maybe they don't have the taste for being aggressive, but you need to at this point.
Yeah, a couple of stories. First off, Benedict Arnold, remember him?
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody thinks of Benedict Arnold as a traitor to the country, which he was. But before he was a traitor, he was a very well thought of patriot. And one of the first things he did was arm the militia in Boston to stand up against the British. He got them the arms, and where did he get them? He got them from the armory,
Mm-hmm.
where they were kept. And he and other patriots went and stared down the British official in charge of that armory and says, we're coming in to get the guns. Get out of the way," which the guy did because he was outnumbered, and they went in and got the guns, and then we were able to fight the British. But this is how the guns were handled in colonial America. I mean, if you lived out in the frontier, yeah, you had your rifle because you used it to hunt with, to get game to put on the table, and to defend yourself in various ways. But in town, people weren't walking around with their flintlocks or their muskets. These were in an armory where they were controlled. That's what was going on back then. They were controlled, and you got a gun when you needed a gun. If you were out in the country, yes. If you were out in the frontier and the territories, yes, they weren't regulated. But every place in America, I don't care if it's Virginia, Massachusetts, Georgia, wherever there were civilized people, the guns were controlled. Same thing in the Old West. You come to town, you turn in your guns at the sheriff's office, and you hit the saloon. They want a bunch of liquored up cowboys firing off their guns in town. It didn't happen. It's only in modern America that we have become so stupid and so dedicated to this proposition that everybody gets a gun. It's a modern thing. They outlawed machine guns in the 40s or the 20s because criminals had them.
Right.
That's why they were outlawed. And whenever they were confiscated, they were destroyed. So it's only in modern America that we've become so stupid that we have interpreted the Second Amendment in that way. Before that, that thing called common sense usually held sway, and particularly in the Supreme Court, where they would look at something and say, well, maybe they meant it different back then, but this is now. I mean,
Right.
a real Supreme Court, a real jurist looks at a statute or something in light of what's going on now. Okay, in the 1860s or the 1850s, they allowed slavery. Well, we don't allow that now. So any statute that affects that cannot be considered anymore. Back then, women were under the thumb of their husband. Well, they can vote now, and they have passed all of this other legislation since then. None of that pertains. The Comstock Act that they want to bring back to ban abortion no longer pertains. Come on, people, join the modern, and that's why they want to turn the clock back, because we've made these gains, and it drives them crazy because they can't control everything as long as other people have rights. So they want to roll those rights back.
Well, they're doing
I have a right not to be shot by somebody.
Right. But they're doing what the Republicans do. The Democrats get some gains when they get in power. They don't try to do anything to improve on what we've got. They try to destroy whatever the Democrats put up. I mean, that's just their process, and that's how they do things. They're mostly destructive and not positive in any way for this country. Ed, we'll take a quick break, and we got some more stuff to talk about. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Ed is with us today. It's always a robust conversation with Ed. Ed, people last week were noticing you were a little fired up. You were on a roll last week. You got your grumpy old man on.
Well, as we get closer to the election, I feel that it is required of me to state in no uncertain terms what a huge decision this is. Quite frankly, it grieves me greatly that there's even a question. Someone has, and I forget who it was, has pointed out that this election is a lot like if you were on an airplane and the flight attendant comes down the aisle with the cart, and it's one that's serving food. So she says you could either have filet mignon with a baked potato and green beans, or you can have this hockey puck studded with glass and covered with dog shit. And which would you prefer? That is the choice in this election. You have the filet mignon, which is Joe Biden, or the hockey puck with glass covered in dog shit, which is Donald Trump. And yet we're running neck and neck. So it's insane to me that half my countrymen, and I know it really isn't half,
No,
it's
it's
just the
not.
way the media portrays it, but even 30% of my countrymen prefer hockey puck studded with glass covered in dog shit to filet mignon.
I'm
So naturally, I get a little heated.
I'm going to make a statement here. It just came to me. I had never thought about this before, but I do a lot of uh, analogies. I do a lot of analogies, and I do that inadvertently. I don't know why I do it. I always do it. But I see this election and the outcome of the election is similar to the outcome of World War II. We win, we're back on track. We lose, we're totally fucked. I think there's some comparisons there because
Yep.
we're talking about dictatorships, we're talking about freedom, we're talking about just horrible scenarios if the Democrats don't win this election. People will say, "Well, that's crazy. You're exaggerating." I don't think I am. I really don't think I
No,
am.
no, you're not. No, and really, Trump is a sideshow in a way. This is a battle against the kleptocracy of the corporations.
Right.
Because, quite frankly, the reason we get so much disinformation is that corporations control the flow of information.
True.
Corporations control the media, whether it is broadcast media, whether it is streaming media, whether it's online, whatever it may be, whether it's social media, all controlled by corporations, some of them headed up by strong individuals like Musk and Bezos and so forth. But they're still corporations, and they're still the corporate mind is what's running this thing. Even those individuals have a lot of influence, in some case almost total influence, but still it's a corporate thing. That's where the battle is.
Yeah.
And they are the ones, these rich guys who are rich because of the corporations behind them, they are the ones who are telling these Supreme Court justices, whom they bought and put in place, what to do. They are the ones who told them, fine for the bump stocks so that the rabble will vote for our candidate. They're buying the rabble. They are funding the Christian nationalists because they think that, okay, these guys believe this crap, so yeah, throw them a bone so they'll vote for us too. But this is what we're up against. It's something far more powerful and sinister than this idiot, not even savant. He's just an idiot,
Yeah.
Donald Trump. That was created by the media. Let's face it, this was a failed businessman, a rotten human being who was created, became a fictional character created by TV moguls in order to and then based on that he was able to run for president, and the really stupid people voted for him. But Trump himself, not so much. It's what's behind Trump that's the scary part. And
I
as you say, one thing we've got to do is take back the Supreme Court because that's who owns it right now, the corporations.
Well, and I've been calling this the decision season. This is where the Supreme Court has all kinds of cases during the year, and they come to the end of the term because they need a vacation for the summer. From what I don't fucking know, but we're going to get a lot of decisions between now and the end of the month because July 1, Clarence is out in his $275,000 RV, living like regular
That's
people.
right.
That's what he's
Yeah.
going to be doing. But so we get
Coming soon to
decisions.
your local Walmart parking lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you imagine pulling up in your little scamp trailer and seeing this fucking $275,000 thing pull up next to you, and that dumb fuck walks out? God help him if that's me, because I don't care who he is. Anyway,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
decisions are coming out now, and they're coming out fast and furious. We got the one that you just talking about the bump stock. And what troubles me about the bump stock thing, it's like everything with the Supreme Court. they'll say, well, it's not the concept of it. There's this technical loophole because basically
Yeah.
the question was, does this make that gun a machine gun? Well, in realistic terms, it doesn't make it a machine gun, but it makes it act like a machine gun, which is the problem. But we had the other situation where Supreme Court kind of surprised us, where they had the question about mifepristone, which is the abortion drug, and they found against it. So mifepristone will still have people will still have access to it because the Supreme Court didn't shut that down, and I think it surprised a lot of folks.
Well, it did, but what they really did was punt. Okay.
Right, right,
They found themselves on their on goal line here up against it because let's face it, they realize that women want access to abortion, and this is the way abortion is done now. Primarily, is through these chemical means.
right,
That's how most abortions are done. If they find them early enough, of course, and there are no other complications. It's quick and easy. Well, I take that back. It's not an easy decision, and it's not quick, and it is not. I'm sure it's devastating for a goodly amount of those who do it. But so I don't mean to denigrate that in any way. But at the same time, it's easier than having to go in through a crowd of people calling you a whore to get the procedure done. Right? You can do
right.
it at home, take the drug, and you're good. But they know that taking this away is really going to drive people in November to go to the ballot box and vote against Donald Trump. They realize this. And remember, these justices are bought. They are political hacks. They are not jurists. So what did they do? They decided that the people who brought the suit didn't have standing, which means that suit can come right back next time, and it will, from someone who can prove some sort of standing, and they'll find somebody to bring it. So it will be back. But for right now, for the same reason that they decided to consider presidential immunity, it's a delaying tactic, right? They didn't want. They wanted to consider this just so that nothing would be done before the election. They're considering it the last day of the this term of the Supreme Court. I'm guessing what they will do is simply turn it back. But in the meantime, they've delayed it, and they have delayed the cases. They've delayed the cases that were dependent on this ruling.
Right.
So that was the whole point in them doing that, was to delay, and then they were successful the same way that the judge in the stolen documents case delay, and both have been successful. And they, by attacking Fani Wallace down in Atlanta, they delayed that one. Same thing, delay. And they have, that shows how they have taken over our judicial system. And of course, they do what they always do. They accuse the Democrats of what they have done. The Democrats have not weaponized the Department of Justice. Quite the contrary, the Republicans have.
And they proved it with Hunter Biden. Um,
Yes.
the thing about the Supreme Court that proves to me that they are corrupt and criminal and they are damaged and they are no longer credible is you've got the Supreme Court, who is supposed to be the highest court in the land and the final arbiter to the important questions of this country. The thing that amazes me is that this high court punts as often as it does. And when they punt, it's
Sure.
specifically for political reasoning, for partisanship, which
Yes.
is exactly the opposite of what they're not supposed to be. Those two things perfectly illustrate why we have a problem in the Supreme Court and why it needs to be fixed.
Absolutely. And the major decisions they have made in, well, since Reagan, let's say, Citizens United, clearly a mistaken opinion. Corporations are not people. Corporations are legal fiction. They do not exist
Right.
beyond the fact that they limit liability and do a few other things for the huge number of people who are part of that corporation, from stockholders to the officers and so forth. Clearly, there is not one person, one viewpoint in any corporation.
Right.
So it's bogus. The thought about it, there is no justification for it. It's just that they wanted it to be, and so it is. And equating money with speech is also fucking insane. Pardon me. That just means that if I have $1 billion, then my say is much greater than the guy who has $100.
Right.
Who makes, or if he even makes 60 grand a year, the impact of the guy with money is going to be so much more. Because let's say I want to run for senator in Tennessee. I make 60 grand a year, and I maybe I can put up a few signs. Maybe the party will get behind me and give me a few bucks. But if I'm Elon Musk and I want to be the senator from Tennessee, I can put up a billboard in every town calling Ed Jones a dumb fuck, or whatever I can do. And there's no way I can fight that back.
No.
All of that money that candidate has virtually assures his election, or her. And let me just give you a local example here of something that's going down here too. Well, I don't want to get off track. I can do that at some other time. But the Supreme Court, your point is well taken here. They have taken the court. It is purely political now. Their decisions are purely political, and there's no way they can defend against that. There is no legal reasoning behind most of this stuff. I mean, you have Alito giving speeches where he says restoring godliness to public life is the Supreme Court's highest calling. That's what he thinks. And whereas the Constitution says no, no, that's not right. Just because you have strong religious feelings don't mean jack shit when it comes to government, bucko.
Yeah, people forget that when our forefathers came across the um, came across the ocean, they were too there to they left to get away from taxes without representation and choice in religion. They were very specific in the Constitution that this isn't Christian. There is no religion that controls anything, and that was the problem in Britain. Religious, the Catholics or whoever it was controlled everything. They controlled the government and they controlled the people, and that's why they got the fuck out of there. So to suggest the forefathers want us to return to that is absolutely absurd.
Exactly. There's been a meme going around from the first woman on the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor, appointed by a Republican, had a Republican background, and the meme basically says, "I have to wonder why people want to replace a system that has worked so well for us with one that has never worked well for anyone."
Right.
And what she meant was separation of church and state is good, and any government that incorporates religion is bad because it ultimately you ultimately get despotism and murder. That's what you get. If the Catholics are in charge, they're murdering the Protestants. If the Protestants are in charge, they're murdering the Catholics, and everybody kills the Jews. So it's just that's the way it works. And there is, if anyone can show me in history, and maybe they'll find some little principality somewhere where you had a balance of church and state where things went well. Okay, maybe you can find it. I've never seen it, and I've looked.
No, I mean, more people have died because of religion than anything else in this world. Um, people say our way is right, your way is wrong, and that's where the fight begins. And we got enough trouble with that. We got enough partisanship in our Congress and in politics in general. And it goes back to what we said before. Our Congress is there for a very specific reason, to come together, to compromise and negotiate and come up with something that's decisions that are fair for all people as opposed to just one side. And that's one of the problems we've had with Congress for so long, is that we don't have that compromise. We don't have that collegiality. We don't. It's our side against your side, and this is why nothing gets done, because everybody's trying to obstruct the other guy.
Exactly, and they know no history. Now I'm going to for the religious folks, and I consider myself spiritual but not religious. I haven't found a church yet that I think is worth a damn. I'm sorry. I think they just want to control people. But I will spot you 10 commandments that God gave to Moses that he brought down from the mountain. I personally think that's myth, but I'm going to spot you those 10, okay? Everything else after that, nowhere in the Bible does it say God gave those. These are the creation of man.
Right.
Every one of them. Leviticus, Deuteronomy, the Old Testament, where they lay these things out, where you got to stone the woman if she isn't a virgin on her wedding night. If there isn't evidence for that, you got to stone her. Okay, then some guy came up with that. That ain't God. Sorry.
No.
And anything based on that is pure fantasy. These are men who these were nomads wandering around the desert back then. And they came up with these things, trying desperately to restore, to put some sort of order in their otherwise disorganized lives. But you want to, but they're not. They are the creation of man, as is every other law. I give you those 11. Jesus gave one more, and he called it a new commandment. And I firmly believe that what he said was, forget about those 10. They're not really that great anyway. And besides, Hammurabi gave you half of them already, the Egyptians. No, love one another. And if you love one another, you got to do these things. You got to provide for the poor and the widows, and you got to help people. And if people are in prison, you go and visit them, help them out. I mean, this is what we should be doing. But no, all of these schmoes want to come up with. They want to go back. Well, it's against homosexuals, which never appeared in the Bible, by the way, until 1937.
Right.
But at any rate, still, they want to pluck these things out of the Old Testament. This is an abomination. That's an abomination. Well, not the shellfish, because I like crab, but still, this is an argument that gives me a headache, because the guys doing it don't have a background in either theology or law.
No.
They just want to win votes from the really, really stupid who believe in dogma, not in any sort of real religious tradition.
I've often said here that I don't ascribe to any religion, because I believe anytime you get humans involved in something having to do with God, it becomes tainted, it becomes perverted, and it becomes about power and money for themselves, much like you said. The thing about it is the single best quote I've ever heard from a religious leader came from the Dalai Lama. I've said this on the show before. It's been a while, but so if you've heard it before, I don't give a fuck. I repeat myself. But the single most important quote and best quote from a religious leader was the Dalai Lama. He was being interviewed by people about being a Buddhist. I'm not promoting being a Buddhist, because I don't know much about that. But somebody said, explain your religion to us. Explain your religion. It seems complex. And the Dalai Lama looked at him and said, it's actually very simple. Just love one another. Because if you do that, all the other 10 commandments fall in line. And it's as simple as that. But you can't get any kind of control. You can't gain any power if you don't add some extra rules to that shit. Love each other, but hate LGBTQ people, or look sideways at people of color. If you did what the Dalai Lama said and just love one another, regardless of race, creed, whatever, you'd be fine. You'd cover all the 10 commandments and all the things that God ever taught in the Bible. If you just loved one another. It's not until some other people that have other fucking agendas decide to make these rules to make you a sinner no matter what you do.
Exactly. And two recent things. Number one, the Southern Baptist, the Southern Baptist leadership have always been a bunch of crap heads.
Yeah.
But really wanting to subjugate women. They're really into that for some reason. They really don't like women. They really hate women. And they really think that they should be slaves. So that's one thing I've always hated about them. The second one is they cover up child abuse. There's
Yep.
as much child abuse in the Baptist churches as there is in the Catholic Church. They
Right.
just hide it better. But the other thing that they just did was come out against in vitro fertilization. They want to make it illegal. This was just yesterday. Uh, and their reasoning is because it's dealing with frozen embryos and those are people. Well, they're not. They're embryos. They're tissue. They're nothing. You know, they are routinely flushed down the toilet, and God kills 40% of them right off the bat. You know,
Right.
so no, they're not people. And anybody who says they are is just a moron. And this is a religious political statement. They are trying to say, no, you can't have in vitro because they want the quote unborn, which is not a category. They want these embryos to be counted as people so that they can use that to, stop all abortion and to force 11-year-olds to have babies that they and this is another thing. I read a thing from a gynecologist who started out in the South, and he said most of the abortions that he performed, and this was in the 50s through the 80s, were on children who'd been impregnated by their fathers. So he
Yeah.
was aborting not only the child of the young girl, but also her sister or
Right.
brother.
Right.
That this has been going, and believe me, this is endemic to this area. It's been going on forever, and it is disgusting, and it is overlooked. And often they went with that old biblical thing where if a guy gets a girl pregnant, she has to marry him. I mean, even through rape.
Right.
And that happened here quite a bit, quite a bit.
Well,
And anyway.
well, you bring up the IVF thing, and I find this interesting. The IVF, in vitro fertilization, came up a while back, and the Republicans were against it. Then they got this huge
Right.
blowback. They said, "Oh, no, 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 no. We like IVF. We like it. We like it." Then we get the Baptists coming out with this, and that's fine. They support pedophilia, so it isn't surprising that they'd be against IVF. Uh, but interestingly enough, a bill came up in Congress to codify and secure access to IVF. And guess what? The
Right.
Republicans who claim they're for it shot it
Voted
down.
against it.
They voted
Every
against
one
it.
of them.
Just like the,
100%.
just like they voted against saving contraception, just like they
Right.
voted against a bipartisan border bill twice. And I think Schumer's doing a good job here. He's specifically putting these things up to be voted on, knowing they would be shot down, knowing who would shoot them down, to put them on the record and expose them for the bullshit liars they are. But these people, well, how do we know what they think? Because they complain about something or they support something and then they vote against it. There's really no way to know where they truly stand on anything.
Well, let me give you an example here. My representative right now is a woman named Diane Harshbarger. She and her husband owned a company that supplied drugs to drugstores, right? Well, they got some cheap Chinese drugs that they sold to the VA, claiming they were domestically produced. Their company had two officers, her husband and her. Charges were brought. He took the rap, went to prison. She ran for Congress. She put out a commercial with a picture of the cross with a voiceover and her name. That was one. The other one was a picture of her with a shotgun slung over her shoulder going hunting. That was the other one. And there was one more. I forget what that was, but it was similar. It was a pro-Trump thing. And that was what she did. She refused to debate. She ran those three ads, and she won handily over two guys, one who had been the mayor, both of them had been mayors of major cities in the district and had some actual government experience. She had none. She was elected, went to Washington. She's done not offered no legislation other than some stuff in support of Trump and a couple, nothing of any significance at all. She's running for reelection. Her son is running for state senate. He's just as much I mean, he's just as much of a member of the Harshbarger crime family as the one who went to prison. I think he was eventually pardoned by Trump, but he went to prison for a few years. While she, equally guilty, went to Congress. The guy running against him has been a state senator for some time, Republican. He's got ads out, a picture of him and Lundell or Lundeen, whatever his last name is support school choice, which means vouchers, which means taking money out of the public coffers and giving it to private and religious schools, right, or paying back rich people for the tuition they pay for those schools. But nobody knows that around here. They just, oh, well, school choice, that's a good idea. I want people to have school choice. But when they reach in your pocket to pay for it, maybe you might notice that. But people here are so ignorant. And it's a one-party state. I mean, these are two Republicans going against each other, and really, it's who's worse, the guy from the crime family or the doofus who's been around forever, done nothing, and is riding this school choice thing. It just, this is why I'm considering moving back, because at least in Minnesota, my vote will count.
Yeah, Minnesota's a good state. I think our governor's doing a good job. They've accomplished a lot in the last couple of years. I'm maybe for the first time ever, I'm proud of the state and what the government's doing. I'm sure they do plenty of things wrong, but they're heads above places like Tennessee or Texas or Florida or that kind of thing. I wanted to bring up Georgia. We were talking about Georgia. You brought it up briefly about how they've successfully delayed Fani Willis's prosecution of Donald Trump in Georgia. And they did this by trying to discredit Fani Willis, get her to recuse herself. It went to court. The judge said, nah, she's good. She can stay and do it. And of course, they appealed it. And by appealing it, we heard that, okay, yeah, we're going to listen to this case in October, which guarantees that it will go on past the election. And I've talked about that before. I'm not as worried about that as I once was. But something just happened yesterday that's interesting. Fani Willis's attorneys have now moved to dismiss that appeal based on it's ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. And it could get dismissed because there is no basis in doing it. My question is, why do we wait till now to do that? And does she have a chance to get it dismissed in a Georgia court? I'm going down to Georgia on Sunday. On Monday morning, I'll see if I can straighten this shit out for Fani. I have to go to Atlanta. I'm in Savannah, but but it's interesting that Fani Willis and her lawyers are taking a ploy that Donald Trump has tried over and over and over again. We need to dismiss this case. We need to dismiss that appeal. But now she's doing it to them. And she's actually got some standing to maybe get that kind of decision.
Sure, she does.
And if she does, we're back on track. We're back in court. We're getting shit done.
Well, it's so important because there are so many who have come forward in that case from the lawyers that represented Trump in the various bogus appeals of the election and so forth that have been charged in this. How many is it? 12, 13, something like that. And then Mark Meadows involved and all of that stuff. I don't know if that's been resolved yet either. I know he was wanting to get into federal court, and nothing has really happened there. At least we haven't heard about it because it's been on hold with all of this, them trying to discredit Fani. But it would be great. It would be terrific if this could come in, even have a jury seated before the election. I mean, once again, you get one felony conviction against a guy, that's one thing. You get two. It's hard to argue. Reasonable people are going to say, well, two juries, average people, not Democrats, not all liberals. I mean, like in the most recent case, one of the jurors who voted to convict Trump on all 34 of those counts said, "I get most of my news from Trump Social, and you know, other right wing media. But I mean, this is clear cut. You
Yeah.
know, this guy's guilty as hell, guilty as sin."
Well, and then that's the one thing I kept getting people coming into my comments saying, "Oh, it's going to be a hung jury. It's going to be a hung jury." And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"No. Well, what if they have one Trump humper in there?" Well,
Well,
it's a
they
much
did.
they did, and it's a and I'm not surprised by that, but it's a much different situation to put a human out in front of some fucking building with a MAGA hat on, screaming the shit he's screaming. But when you sit in a courtroom 6 hours a day for 8 weeks, looking at this dumb fuck, seeing the evidence, getting a little bit of peer pressure from the people around you, it's hard to make the wrong decision and be that one person that goes against everything. That's why it's kind of rare that you get hung juries, and why everybody was so sure that that was going to happen. I kept saying, it's not going to happen. It's too obvious. Even the dumbest motherfucker, when it's thrown in their face day after day, they're going to be hard pressed to come up with a reason to not vote with the normal people. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it's going to come down to, well, I just like Trump, and that's not an argument. That's not,
No.
you know, that doesn't fly, and they're not going to let you get away with it. But uh, it would be terrific if that case could go forward. The other case, of course, with the documents and so forth, which has probably been a hard sell anyway, since practically every other president seems to have had some, even though Trump's was deliberate and egregious.
Yeah.
Still, the fact that Biden had a few and Obama had a few, and way back, everybody, Nixon, you name it, you know, they've all hung on to some for one reason or another, mostly inadvertent. Um, but it might be a hard sell to some people. I'm not sure, but still, I mean, we see the judge deliberately delaying things, and that's I don't know how the 11th Circuit, I believe it is, how they can sit there and look and go, oh man, this lady is really a bad judge, and it's so obvious what
Well,
she's doing. They
well,
have to be able to see that. They've
well,
ruled it twice actually.
yeah, I'm sure they see it, but they can't react to anything until they get an appeal. And Jack Smith has
Right.
to have something to appeal, and schedule changes aren't appealable. But he's backing her into a corner. I think ultimately she will be taken off the case because she's at a point where she's got to make some decisions that are appealable, and that's what's going to take her out. She's just over and
Yeah,
above
all of
being
this. Go ahead.
over and above being biased, she's incompetent too. She doesn't know what she's doing. One of the most important cases in the history of this country, and she doesn't know what she's doing. I just want to say one thing. You said something that I hear from a lot of people. Well, Donald Trump took documents. Well, other presidents have taken documents. There really is no comparison. Donald Trump
No,
took
there isn't.
truckloads of fucking documents. He put them in his home. He was asked to return them. He says, I don't have them. They came to look for them with the FBI, and he hid them. We found more after they were searched. We also know that he disseminated some of this stuff. So to compare it to Pence or Biden, there's no fucking comparison. You want to say it's equal because they all take documents? Fine. It's what he did once he had the documents that's so different than what everybody else has done.
Exactly. I mean, in the crush to leave, you're going to have some of that. I understand that. But we also know that boxers were loaded on a helicopter and transferred to Bedminster. I don't know what happened to those. Nobody else seems to know either.
Right.
And that I assume there is an ongoing investigation about that.
You
And
would hope.
I don't know why that hasn't been brought in. Maybe it will be when and if the case ever makes it to trial. Because if in some alternate bizarro world that Trump was reelected, then he would just have his DOJ do away with all of this. And this is really, once again, now we've got Merrick Garland has been. They're trying to impeach him. They're trying to drag him charge him with um, not doing his job. The Republicans are, when he has done a great job for them by dragging his feet. And
Absolutely.
now he's been all out outraged, that they're politicizing this and everything. Well, sorry, dude, if you'd done your job the way you should have done it, this wouldn't be an issue. Trump would be in jail for the next 100 years based on all of these cases, and Republican Party would be totally destroyed. Joe Biden would be strolling in a walk into the presidency for 4 more years, and probably his successor would go on for another 4 or 8. So, Merrick, I really am disappointed in you, and whatever you're getting now is what you deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, if the Republicans want to impeach Merrick Garland, cool. We'll just replace him with
Uh,
Jamie Raskin or Amy Klobuchar, and then we'll really fucking kick your ass with somebody who knows how to do the job.
Well, I mean, let's face it, it's a futile exercise anyway. It's another time killer, it's another time waster, so that focuses the attention on that rather than them not doing anything, which is what they have done for the entire Biden presidency. They have done nothing except the Senate and a few others would go along when it benefited them. So, we got a few things done, but mainly they've been dragging their feet. And this is just more of that. They can impeach all they want. There will be no conviction. That's what it comes down to. They don't have the numbers. They won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So it's pointless. It's meaningless. It's just them trying to paint a narrative that doesn't make any sense for a guy that's been seemingly working for them the whole time. There's no reason why he should have put up a special prosecutor for Hunter Biden. The deal was the deal. It should have stuck.
Well, and the thing with Hunter Biden, they were trying to stain Joe Biden, make him look bad.
Sure.
And they accomplished just the opposite because
Yes.
the fact that Hunter Biden was convicted was the last thing the Republicans wanted. They wanted him to get off so they could say, see, it's weaponized. And then they wanted Joe Biden to say, well, I'll pardon him. But Joe says, I'm not going to pardon him. Then they said, well, maybe he'll commute it. And then Joe said, no, I'm not going to commute it either. What is. And that's the way it's going to stand. So they tried to make Joe Biden look bad, and all they did is make him look really fucking good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they keep trying to spin it somehow like this was all a master plan of this doddering fool. They can't have it both ways. He's either senile or he's a genius, an evil genius. Take your pick. You can't have both. I won't let you. Sorry.
Well,
So
it's like
they're
calling
trying
him.
to say, well, the whole. Go ahead.
Well, it's like calling him Sleepy Joe and saying he's doing cocaine. Those two things don't
Right.
add up. If you've ever known somebody who's done
No.
cocaine, and I do, they ain't fucking sleepy. That's for sure.
Yeah, just go to Donald Trump Jr.'s feed, and you can tell exactly what that's about.
Well, and
I
that
mean, this guy's so coked up. He must have a regular delivery from Colombia twice a week.
well, you make a good point. He's on video all the time, and there are frequently guns behind him,
Oh
and he's
yes.
clearly doing coke. We need to test that motherfucker and start taking some guns
Oh,
away from Don Jr.
absolutely. I mean, where's the DOJ on Don Jr.? I mean, this guy's admitting it every day that he opens that camera.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're getting toward the end here, and I just, people always say we've got to do something about the Supreme Court. We've got to stack the court or impeach people, and it all depend on where we end up with the majority in the House and the Senate and with the presidency. But I think there's one more step that we have to do if we really want to impeach a Supreme Court justice or stack the deck. I think we need to get the majority in the House and the Senate. We need to address the Supreme Court, but first, in order to do that, we need to get rid of the filibuster. Once we get rid
Absolutely.
of the filibuster, then we can do something about the Supreme Court. Do you agree with that?
I do. There's two things that we have to deal with. One is Citizens United, and the other is the filibuster, and then the court. Um,
And
and
codifying Roe v. Wade.
and that's probably number one. If we
Yeah.
can codify Roe v. Wade the first day that we have the House and Senate, then we have all the votes we need for the next election. And we
Right.
can always go back and say, hey, we saved Roe v. Wade, or we saved the right to women's rights to control their own bodies, what I
But
prefer to call it.
but wouldn't we have to?
Um,
Wouldn't we, if we don't have a big majority in the Senate, wouldn't we still have to codify or get rid of filibuster before we could codify Roe v. Wade? Or do we need a simple
that's
majority?
No, I think for something like that, you're going to need 2/3. I'd have to look it up, but why not just do that? Because we can use it for so many other things. Get rid of the filibuster; it's not needed. I mean, we may have used it. Democrats may have used it on occasion during the civil rights era, maybe, but and it may have been valuable at that time. But it was a different thing then. That's when you had to stay up there for do the Jimmy Stewart thing and until you collapse,
Right.
hold the line kind of thing. And if that was still the case, I might actually say, okay, well, it can stay around. But no, in its current form, forget it. And I don't want government by parliamentary procedure. I want government by compromise. And that's how you get things done. That's how you get things done that stay and until you get a rogue court like
Right.
we have now. So yeah, we've got to get rid of the filibuster, realign the court, and get rid of money in politics, dark money anyway. I'd rather that it was all money, but I think they ought to have a 2-week period where they can tell us what their policies are. I don't give a shit what your opinion is. I want to know your policies.
Right.
How you're going to do this? How are you going? Do you have the votes to do this, or is this a pie in the sky bunch of bullshit? I want the fourth estate, the media, to hold these people's feet to the fire. I don't want somebody saying, "Well, I'm going to do this." Okay, how are you going to do it? Do you have a bill ready? Does that bill? Can you read us that bill that you're going to put in? Who are your co-sponsors? Do you have anybody on the other side of the aisle who's going to go along with you on this, or is this just bullshit?
Yeah.
That's what I want when a politician appears before a reporter or one of these guys, one of these talking heads. I want them to really get to the bottom of it. You're telling me that you're going to do this. You got to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, it's just wind. You're just blowing in the wind. So let's get back to the point where I did a TikTok about this, and it's still up. I think it's the most recent one with my face on it where I'm talking about rights versus responsibilities. The Constitution gives us a whole lot of rights, but the thing is, it doesn't say this in the Constitution, but it's implied with every right comes a responsibility. You have the right to free speech, but that doesn't give you the right to lie and to put out false information. It gives you the right to say what you truly believe that you can back up. I don't care about your opinion. No, if you have the responsibility to tell the truth, and you have the responsibility that every other person also has that right. Okay, you want the right to have a gun? Okay, you have to make it so. You have the responsibility to make it so that everyone else's rights are not being infringed, because I can shoot off 60 rounds in 8 seconds and kill school children. That's where the responsible part comes in. Rights without responsibilities are just anarchy. And we've got to get to the point where we are balancing every right with the responsibility to make sure that it's interpreted in the right way.
And
Always.
and while we're here, I want to remind folks that if you enjoyed Ed's comments here on the Rational Boomer, you can get them every fucking day, pretty much. You can go to Ed's account on TikTok. It's at Holler Troll, HOLLERTROLL, and you can get that on TikTok and YouTube. And while he does delve into politics, there's a lot of stories and that sort of thing. And fortunately, Ed is quite a storyteller, very entertaining and informational, and you should definitely check it out.
Yeah, lately I've been doing music and text together because I'm just exploring that right now. I'm going to get back to the actual things, the actual TikTok videos where I'm actually talking, but I've been pressed for time, so I've been doing the other, but I'll get back to them. And there's quite a backlog of them there that you can check out on everything from UFOs to rights and responsibilities.
Well, and that's the advantage Ed has in his TikToks. My TikToks, I've got thousands of TikToks, but if you go back farther than a week, they aren't worth anything because they're outdated. Yours are evergreen. You can go back 3 months ago and still find a gem, and I envy you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. But yeah, everybody's welcome and leave comments. I'm glad to hear them. You can call me a schmuck if you want to. I don't care. But as long as you listen to it all the way through.
Right. I listen all the time, and I frequently call you a schmuck, not to your face, of course, but certainly behind your back. I once said
Although
that.
you have.
Well, I may have. I said that on the air one time while we were working together. I said, if you don't have, my mom always told me, if you don't have something nice to say about somebody, say it behind their back. And I said that on the
Yes.
air, and my mom was upset. She was, I never told you that. I go, it was a fucking joke, mom. It was a joke. Well, you can't go out there saying that I tell you this stuff when I didn't. I go, okay, I apologize. I won't do it again. And of course, here I'm doing it again. But she's passed away, so she gets the joke now, I'm sure. Well, Ed, thank you for coming on the show. It's always entertaining. It's always as I say, a robust conversation. And Ed, a little fired up again today, and that's good. That's good. Hopefully, we'll get other folks fired up as well.
Well, me too. Me too.
All right. For those folks listening, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.